Merci beaucoup, Dr Mounir, et je suis très ravi. Notre conférence de symposium des régulateurs internationaux à Sharm el-Sheikh cette année. Est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Oui, oui, très bien, Bilel.
Alors, pour le contexte de l'Internet des objets, je vais basculer en anglais, si vous permettez, parce que je comprends qu'il y a dans votre audience aussi des anglophones. The ITO context on the first slide is really to say that the work on the Internet of Things is coming from the 193 member states, the governments, but especially from the private sectors, where we have about 700 members, and about 120 universities and research institutes. So this is the general context of the work that I'll be presenting today. The second context slide is around the ITU sectors and how we are tackling the Internet of Things. The first one is the radio sector, where it has the responsibility for allocating spectrum and satellite orbits. The second is the development sector, and the third that I work is the standardization sector. In terms of priorities, on the next have three priorities for standardization in the ITU. The first one is the development of the non-radio aspects of 5G for IoT 2020. The second is the Internet of Things and smart cities. And the third is the trust, which includes security and privacy. And these three topics are very much interrelated, as you see on the next slide, where we put the architecture of the network with all the pieces of our Vision 2020, which is the next 4 years of development of standards, where we see that the network has to be programmable. The change from 4G to 5G is not a linear change. It is a change that requires not only providing high broadband connectivity to the user on mobile, but it also, and more importantly, has to connect billions of devices from the Internet of Things. And the third is the usual voice service that the network has. So when you look at the requirements that are being placed on the 5G network, they're quite going in different directions, requiring different aspects of the network, hence the need for programmability. On the next slide, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, which brings the cyber physical systems. So now we have agents working for us, cyber agents, and a lot of them are enabled by the Internet of Things. And the trust aspect becomes an important element, which I'll come back to in a moment. On the next slide, ITU really did not start working on the ITU did not start working on the Internet of Things yesterday, but it started in 2005 in Tunis, where we launched the first report on IoT. And since then, many aspects of the Internet of Things have been happening in the ITU. On the next slide, as you see in the industry, predictions of going into billions of devices. This slide dates from a while back, but things are becoming real today. On slide 9, you have the ecosystem of companies that are using the Internet of Things to provide a number of solutions. The applications or the verticals for personal, home, vehicle, enterprise, and industrial Internet. The platforms and the enablement, which is the horizontal layers, the software platforms, the interfaces, 3D printing, etc. And the bottom block is the building blocks from hardware, software, connectivity, and partners. On the next slide, you see that the market for IoT is huge. It's in the trillions of dollars, and these are various predictions, consulting companies, and that's why we see from our membership that the IoT is one of our key priorities in the ITU. Now let's get to what ITU is doing in terms of providing the world with reference points. On slide 11, there are two important documents from the radio sector, from ITUR. The first one is the recommendation, ITUR SM.1896, which looks at the frequency ranges for global or regional harmonization of short-range devices. Many of the IoT applications are using short-range frequencies. The second one is the ITUR report SM2153-5, which looks at the technical and operating parameters and spectrum use for short-range radio communication devices. So a lot of the IoT devices are today in this governed by these two documents from the radio sector. On the next slide, we try to put these in perspective from the technology. On the bottom right, you have the range and the capability and the bandwidth requirements. So obviously, the radio aspects of IoT, we could use the existing 3G, 4G, and 5G in the future technology, license spectrum. That's one possible way that it's happening today, and a lot of the SIM cards going into vehicles and going into various other devices are providing IoT applications. The second is the short-range devices that I mentioned on the previous slide, governed by a number of ITUR documents. And the third, coming from IEEE, a number of the Wi-Fi standards, and Zigbee, Bluetooth, etc. We also see that there is an emergence of low-power WAN solutions, like Sigfox and etc., that are also being deployed for IoT solutions. On the next slide, we summarize the IQT reference architecture 2060. This is the recommendation that provides the overview of the Internet of Things. We see that it's now used quite extensively as a reference document by many European organizations, international organizations. And in that recommendation between the physical and the world was already defined and agreed back in 2012. Last year, the ITU took the decision that was unprecedented by creating a new study group in the middle of study period focused on the Internet of Things and its application to smart, sustainable cities and communities. And this is study group 20, which collects or consolidates all the work on IoT in one study group in the ITT. Now, the issue, the evolution of the information society, initially it was about human-to-human communication. Now it's about human thing-to-thing communication, but also human-to-thing communication, which is a new element of trust that is required when we have agents, cyber agents working for us or helping us in various activities and extending our privacy and data to beyond our own immediate environment. I'm going to skip a few slides in the interest of time and fast forward to slide 19 that shows towards an IoT-enabled smart community. And one important element here to note is that we need to move from a vertical application of the Internet of Things and ICTs to a more horizontal one, because you can leverage the data and the intelligence that you collect from IoT in a horizontal fashion in a more powerful way than if the data stayed in silos and managed in silos. First, it's not very efficient, but more importantly, it does not provide the smartness or the intelligence that you need to help that data. Now, moving into the next slide, there was the key value from the Internet of Things is really the data. It's not the connectivity. The operators are probably losing money on the connectivity aspect of IoT, but the key element and the value proposition comes from the data and harvesting that data. And that's why big data is very much related to the Internet of Things. It's also an area that is not new to ITU. There was a report that we published in 2006 on the digital life that predicted that the data is going to be the next value and the next area of work. And so now many of our study groups are looking at the privacy aspect, the data aspect, and the data format, and how data can be used to predict and react in real time in an autonomous fashion. Which brings us back to the topic of trust, because it's a bit of an oxymoron between big data and trust. Big data has to be either anonymized, the privacy of the person has to be respected. And so on slide 24, in the context of identity for building trust and privacy, we need to have different views of the data. Depending on who is looking at the data, who's permitted to share it. And so there is an identity view depending on the application needed. I'm going to skip also a few more slides just in the interest of time and look at slide 26. That IoT is imposing a tremendous collaboration, because IoT is really taking the ICTs to other adjacent sectors from the communication sector that may be new to the information technology, whether it's the utility sector, the transportation sector, the aviation sector, the water management, the city map, and therefore the local collaboration from a technology perspective as well as from a regulatory perspective is paramount to enable the environment for IoT solutions to be deployed. The time frame for deploying IoT solutions cannot follow the traditional standardized and then deploy. There is an element of prototyping on the business model. There is an element of prototyping of technology. And doing the standardization in there are certain building blocks that must be standardized to ensure interoperability, but there are also aspects that need to be moving faster in a quite a dynamic environment. So trial and error is really part of the system. The open source development is an important and critical complement to the Internet of Things, because once you have big data or data, access to that data through APIs, those APIs have to be open, the development of the APIs, it community work. And this is a new frontier that the ITU, as an organization that has been around for 150 years, standardization sector for the past 60 years, we're celebrating the 60th anniversary this year, we can no longer operate in an environment where the open source is not an integral part of our development, and therefore we are now looking at the IPR, intellectual property rights, the rules of the game that would allow vendors that continue to work in the proprietary or in the patent protection model, and also vendors themselves are moving into an open environment. So we have a discussion and debate on how to implement these two environments. So on slide 24, 26, you can see the various study groups working on the local collaboration. On 27, you see some of the key partners, ISO and IEC, our partners with ITU, the three international organizations on smart cities. One end-to-end have reached an agreement in their work to fast forward all of their specifications through ITU to become international reference. Work very closely with the IEEE Standards organization or association. IEEE is engaged, it's a member of ITU, and we work with them closely, and many other SOs. We finally have a collaboration, JCA, a joint collaboration activity that tries to put the roadmap of standards for IoT in one place, and it's an open platform for all the stakeholders to participate. Last but not least, at the end of this year in October, Tunisia, as you know, many of you may know, is hosting the World Telecommunications Standardization Sampling in Hammamet from 25 October to the 3rd of November, which will be preceded by a global standards symposium and a CXO meeting kindly hosted by Tunisia. With that, Chairman, I thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you.